The Mindset Show, episode 1, teeing off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are tuning into us from. And welcome to the very first episode of The Mindset Show. What an incredible time to be here. Very excited to be joined by two of my very good friends and colleagues in Justin Sua and Lauren Johnson. I am Brian Miles, and we have an awesome show to get into today. I am wicked excited about diving into some incredible topics on mental performance. And we figured that since it's the first show, we might as well do the standard introductions of who we are, what we do, and most importantly, why are we doing this show with the insane amount of other work we have on our plates? So, being the host for the day, let's dive right into this. Again, I am Brian Miles. What I do, I am the mental performance coordinator with the Cleveland Indians in Major League Baseball, coming up on my 6th season with the team. Prior to that, I've worked with the military and done some consulting with companies and other teams. But the real question is why are we doing this show? Why am I on a show with two of my friends who also do mental performance work? And what I've realized in kind of the time we've been doing this is one, 3 minds are definitely better than one. But most importantly, I'm about giving back. I want to give back to the field of mental performance. And I think that I've learned over the course of time that the best way to give back is to share. And there's nobody I'd rather share with than my friends and the people that are doing this, the people that have seen me at the highs and the lows and helped me through some of those struggles. And so I want a fun learning engagement and a place to do that. And we thought, well, why not record it and give it a shot? So that's why we're going to be doing this show. And Lauren, I would love to hear who you are, what you do, and why you're doing the show.
All right. So like you said, I am Lauren Johnson. This is actually my 1-month anniversary of being on my own in my own business, own company. Thank you. So recently, last month, I started my own company, Lauren Johnson & Co., as a mental performance coach and speaker. Prior to that, I was the mental conditioning coordinator throughout the minor league system with the New York Yankees. And I think, why we are doing this, why I'm doing this, and just to kind of piggyback a little bit off what you said, Brian, is this idea of sharing and vulnerability. There's so much in the world of mental performance that I think is kind of under wraps, that isn't talked about. And so I not only want to share, what we know about it, but also those personal experiences and the vulnerability underneath it all, like what it really looks like, not just, oh, this is what you should do, but the stuff that you're facing, like what you're dealing with, like the realness. I want to talk about the realness of mental performance and what that looks like on a daily basis.
That's awesome. I'm Justin Sua, currently the mental performance coach for the Tampa Bay Rays, previously with the Boston Red Sox and the Cleveland Browns. Had a stint at the IMG Academy and the military as well. Married, we have 3 kids. We got 3 teenagers, as Brian mentioned. And for me, I have a lot of blind spots. I have a lot of things that I need to learn. I have a lot of things that I think I know, that I think that you two are going to continue to expand my circle of competence. I want to share my failures. I want to share some of the things I'm learning. I want to learn myself. And this is a great opportunity to hang out with some friends of mine. And so both Lauren and Brian, knowing you guys for years, and looking forward to just hanging out with you guys. And so looking forward to this.
Awesome. So as you guys can hear, it sounds like a common theme from the group of us that we want to share, we want to engage, we want to give back. And really, when we think about how this show works, that's exactly what it is. Our plan is pretty simple. We want to riff on the questions that people want answered. So there's certainly burning questions that Justin, Lauren, and I have thought about in the world of mental performance, things that come up all the time on the baseball field or on the football field or in the boardroom. Those are things we want to discuss, but we also want to discuss that maybe there's things that grad students want to know, like, hey, what are the things that you don't learn in school that are really important in the world of mental performance? What are the things that are so important to starting your own business or to engaging with people in high performance? How do you handle a world like this with COVID and working from home and uncertainty and ambiguity? That's what we want to do. So again, we're going to be three people that are just going to simply sit here and answer questions. We're going to agree, we're going to disagree, we're going to build on things, we're going to find blind spots, and it's going to be an absolute blast. And again, when we think about the end product, we just want authenticity and realness. And I think that that's what the purpose of this show is. And man, oh man, are we excited to get started. And so without further ado, we might as well dive right into it and talk about teeing up a great question. Justin, tell me this. What fires you up in the world of mental performance?
What fires me up about in the world of mental performance, something that I just love in general about it, is the universal nature of it. That it's not just for elite athletes. That the world of mental performance could be applied to parenting. It could be applied to relationships. It could be applied to teachers and doctors and grocery store clerks. We all have this mental game, and I think maybe we should define mental performance. Like, I don't know. Like, what would you guys say? Like, what is mental performance for you guys?
I love this definition. In terms of mental performance, it is being your best regardless of circumstance, being able to show up as the best version of you. And obviously, the mental game is so important and influential to our actions and our physical game. So I think it's mastering our mind to become more adaptable.
That's, yeah. I mean, I love that, and I think the idea too is like there's great mystery in the mental game. So that like that's what's so interesting to me is that you see these incredible performances, right? The ones that are on TV and these unbelievable feats, and it makes you wonder like how do they do that? How do they get like there's this like mystery behind like what are they thinking? Like what got them there? There's also like beautiful ordinary mystery of like my goodness, like that person is going through a lot right now, but yet they're getting up and they're grinding every day and they're working through something. Like there's this kind of like mystery within what they do as well. And I think that's mental performance is like that ability to ebb and flow and thrive in those situations. And I think, like you said, Justin, it's for everybody, which is what's so cool about it.
Yeah, that's cool. I love those definitions. Thanks for answering that. And for me, what I love in addition to that is I love the individuality of it. I love the fact that even though these experts say this is how you're confident, or this is how the best in the world say this is how they relax, that might necessarily apply to you, and how it's so individual, and it's just constant. We're always under construction and identifying, hey, what works for me. That's what I love. That fires me up, because we're constantly evolving, constantly changing. And just because the pundits and the research and the experts and the best in the world say it works for them, it might not necessarily work for you. So it requires you going on a little quest to see what it looks like
and
for you.
That's what fires me up. I have to jump in here because the one thing that I think, it just made me think about this as you were speaking, Justin, was we all have a connection to it, right? It's something that connects all of us, is this idea of mental performance and the things that we all go through. And when we speak about our struggles and we speak about the things that that inevitably come up in life and in performance, no matter, like you said, whether you're a grocery clerk or you're a professional athlete, it is something we can all relate to. We can all relate to those triumphs. We can all relate to those adversities. We can all relate to failures. We can all relate to successes. We can relate to the comebacks. We can relate to all of those things that we end up facing. And so to me, I love how mental performance connects us all in a different way.
I mean, just even the space that it sort of happens into, which, again, I think it ties to what both of you are saying is like, it's for everybody, that like there is a connection with it. And I think, even the part about like as a mental performance coach is there's times where people find it to be this arbitrary thing, right? So like I talked about mystery, but they think it's like, it's this thing in the air that nobody can touch. And the part that like fires me up is sometimes when, and I often find it in collaboration with like other mental performance coaches, but it's like, how do we make mental performance physical, right? Like, how do we bring it to real life? How do we make them experience something that puts them in an environment where they're like, oh my gosh, like this is it right here. This is what they taught me. This is what they talked about. This is the story that they told. This is it for real life for me. And again, like it's and I think like it's funny because people have been doing this probably forever, but it's like I think always about Ken Ravizza when he did the E60 with Evan Longoria and he talked about the left field foul pole and like that was what he looked at. It's like I feel like for a lot of people it kind of like clicked for them of like, hey, this is not an arbitrary thing that doesn't exist. It's like, how are you bringing it to real life? That fires me up when we get experiences like that, and when you watch it click for somebody and you get to see that experience and expression happen.
Oh, that is so true. Would you guys say, is there anybody it's not for? Is there anyone who is there a population who mental skills training, or in your experience, who I don't know? We talk about how it is for everybody, the universal nature of it. Is there anyone who probably wouldn't benefit from it, or who it's not for? I don't have an answer in my mind off the top of my head, and so I have you guys answer it just so I could buy time to have an opinion
That's
myself.
a really good question. And I think we've
Oh,
all come
that's
into, yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I always have this idea in terms of mental performance is that like, I don't like the word never. People say like, oh, you can never be negative or you should always be
Yeah.
positive. These definitives, I don't like using them because I always think that when we do that, we are excluding like a certain population, right? There's always those outliers. And so I just think we can be more creative than that, okay, this is one way and this is another way, but it's not the only way. And so when I think about that, that really challenges that kind of belief in my mind because do I think that there are outliers that maybe, the work that we do isn't, they don't necessarily need it to be great at what they do in terms of training it. I can see that because I've worked with athletes, right? That they're like, hey, thanks. I like what you're doing, but I'm just, I don't want to sit down and do one-on-ones with you. And I'm like, totally get it, totally respect it. I got that. But do I think that mental performance plays a role in everything that everybody does? Like to some degree, I do. I do think it plays a role. How maybe they train that and how they work through it might be different. But that's a really great
yeah. It makes me want to know too, Lauren, because it's like, yeah, when they say like, oh no, I think I'm good, they probably have a mental performance process that they're using, right? It's like they've established it, and I oftentimes think that's really interesting because sometimes you like the ego check comes in from said mental performance coach, not you, but of course maybe some of us, where it's just like, wait a second, like want my help, like but it plays out in the sense that they like just like the way players have perhaps like developed processes to help them in their physical performance, like a component of that process might be their mental routine and how they engage with their cues and how they deal with adversity and how they reset and things like that. And sometimes sometimes that's just part of what they do, and I think the naming of it, right, like the mental performance coach in us wants to be like, well, can you name it? Do they need to? Like, do they need to? I don't know.
Right, right. I like what you guys are saying. There's some people who, if you just ask them a simple, "Hey, what are your sources of confidence? Hey, what kills your confidence? When you feel like your focus has gone off tracks, what do you do to regain your focus?" They're going to describe their process for attention control, their process for cultivating confidence or resilience or positivity. And unbeknownst to them, maybe the unconscious competence, they are using strategies or tools that are evidence-based, but they don't realize it. That's how they were raised, or that's wired in their DNA, and they didn't know that it was an actual skill that they're executing. But that's a good point. That's a good point. There's some people who are doing it on their own without reading a book, listening to a podcast, or working
I have a
one-on-one with
question for you guys. Did you guys have this
coach.
experience, when you were studying? Like, I know I did. My first course I ever took in sports psychology, I was like, oh, I do that. Oh, I did that. Like you said, Brian, I was like finally putting a label on it. And like you, Justin, like saying the unconscious competence it was kind of something I did. Like I've always, in terms of, for instance, this was one that stood out to me, was like chopping things down to a smaller, more digestible size when you're overwhelmed. Like when I was playing soccer, if it was, we were going to double overtime and I had already given everything I had in those 60 minutes or those 90 minutes, I am already like, oh my God, I have another 25 minutes left. And so I would get 5 minutes at a time and I'd give myself, you can go all in for 5. And I would already do that, but that was kind of a natural thing for me. So I don't know, did you guys ever go through that when you were studying this?
Oh, I mean, come on, as the soccer player who missed a penalty kick in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament, you don't think I've like completely tried to process my own stuff that I was going through? I mean that's why you get into mental performance, and I think and again, like how many times have we been like, if I had only known what I knew then, what now, and it's just like, and I think that experience is slightly what shapes a lot of us as mental performance coaches sometimes, right? Is like our experiences and how we sort of process those through the lens of us being mental performance coaches now, which probably, the three former athletes on here of like, probably why we have that sense of vulnerability and humility for our poor players, because we realize how dang hard it is, and it's like, that's a real thing. But yeah, Lauren, I'm right there with you. And I also think like as mental performance coaches, we have a responsibility to, right, like the players don't need a master's degree in mental performance and or sport and performance psychology. So how we are able to provide the information individually, like Justin said, to the player probably makes a massive difference for their ability to actually apply the mental performance skills, right? We talk about applied sports psychology. So like as practitioners, we should probably start finding better ways to apply it. You know what I mean?
That's such a good point. I remember thinking myself, so I didn't plan on getting a degree in sports psychology. I was a high school teacher and I applied to get my master's in education and I got declined. And so by default, I was like, okay, what's another master's degree I can take? Oh, the psychosocial aspect of sport. I don't know what that is. Let me take a look at it and start seeing things like self-determination theory and confidence and helping people develop that. And I thought, what is this? And next thing you know, learn a little bit more about it. You're like, this is literally what how I was raised. Number one, how I had this natural propensity to be positive or to be grateful. And for me to learn that there was a science, a field of psychology to substantiate these things that I was taught from my parents and my grandparents. I used to call it the fortune cookie degree. It's like be positive and show gratitude, but there's evidence that there's research to show this. And I thought, wow, I can't wait. But yeah, to your point, Lauren, your initial question is yes. Once I learned about this degree and listening to the research in grad school, I thought I was built for this. This is right in my wheelhouse, and I'm glad I got declined from my first degree.
Wow. Talk about ending up where you're supposed to end up. That's pretty wild. And yeah, it's, I think it's cool that, we're starting to all understand a little bit of like what shapes us to where we are and how everyone has their story, whether it's, the athlete you're working with or the person in the boardroom. It's interesting how those things sort of shape it. And, speaking of sort of like the boardroom and athletics and stuff, I think that a lot of times we get, not we, but like the athlete and the sport or the business gets obviously very like results driven and very focused in that sense. And so I think a question that comes up a lot of times, and Lauren, I'll toss it to you, but so how do you focus on the process, on the journey in a results driven world?
And one I've struggled with myself. Like Justin, I don't know if you remember this, but it was right when I started my social media. Okay, so for those of you guys who follow me and Justin on social media, and if you don't already follow Brian, you should. I was starting out and I was comparing my social media to Justin. And I remember looking and I finally I asked him, I was like, what are you doing? Like, I'm thinking there's some like magic formula that like one day I'm just going to blow up and like also viral. And suddenly, I don't know what made me look at this, but I looked at how many posts you had posted compared to mine. And Justin, you had like 2,000 and I had like 250. And that kind of gave me my answer when I was looking. I remember reaching out to you and you were like, Lauren, just focus on the process. And I'm like, you're right. And I looked at his numbers compared to mine and I was like, he's been at the process longer than you have. And it brings me back to this article I read that was, you can't compare your day one to somebody else's day 500. And so when it comes down to, I guess, focusing on the process in a results-driven world, I think the thing for me that helps me focus on the process is redefining what success looks like to be within my control. Because you can do everything wrong and good. and get good results, right? We've done that before. And then you can also do everything right and get bad results. And so, results alone aren't, don't give us the full story. And so I think that, when we redefine success to be executing your process, the quality of what you do versus simply the result of what you do, that's, I think, what not only drives better results in the long run, but I think it also makes it controllable, which I think sometimes when we view results, there's some sort of like out of control and helplessness that comes from that when we're only solely focusing on
that. That's powerful. That's awesome. So this question, so Lauren, you were, if I'm not mistaken, you were describing how you focus on the process and the results for yourself. How do you help the people you work with do the same? Is it very similar? You're just helping them understand
I'll take, like, for instance, like a baseball player in a salon. Okay, actually, this happened, not super long ago, and essentially they were 0 for like several. We'll just say that, and they were telling me actually how how frustrated they were. They just needed to get a hit, and again, very results driven, very results focused. And again, this is baseball. It's like, statistically speaking, it's really important. Stats and results are very important, right? Winning is important. So it's not to say that that's not important, but how do we get those things? And so we go back and we focus on, like, okay, how can we redefine success to be within your control? If you did A, B, and C at the plate, and regardless of result, and you would consider that a success, what would A, B, and C be? And so he went back and he goes, okay, for me, if I was successful in my actions, regardless of results, it would be, I'd be on time, I made the right swing decision, and I had an external focus. Hey, if I did those 3 things, those are the 3 things that make me successful. And so that's where we started focusing. And I said, okay, I want you to focus on the quality reps versus simply results. Now we can look at results too, but it's only if we have these quality reps. And so for anybody, that's one of the first things I start with, is redefining what success looks like. Because oftentimes that can skew where we're looking in the first place.
I like that. And that's awesome. For me, I'm a huge believer in the power of inversion, inverted thinking. So basically it's come from a mathematician, Jacoby, back in the day. So what I love about math, it's very binary, algorithmic, and there's no gray area. And a lot of times this mathematician, French mathematician, he was able, through inversion, answer a lot of very difficult problems. Now we can use also inversion in what we do as well. Instead of saying what brings out the best in me, you invert it and consider what brings out the worst in me. Instead of what inspires me, okay, what drains me, and so forth. So I immediately, when you asked this question, I inverted it in my own mind, just immediate. Instead of what is my process, for me, it's what does my life look like when I'm focused on the results. I am stressed. I am panicked. I get jealous. I have envy. I get down on myself. I beat up on myself. And I use that as a signal. I'll use my emotions. I'll use my behavior. I'll use even my internet, my social media behavior. There's certain people who I'm looking at, I'm reading their thing, and then I'm asking myself why. I'm reading how smart they are, how great they are, and then I'm starting to diminish myself. And then I realize that, to me, is a signal that you're getting away from your process. Justin, you're comparing yourself to other people. You're not trusting your process. And so for me, what helps me stay in my process is to be able to know what it looks like when I'm focused on the results. This is what it looks like, so that it serves as a primer for me to say, hey, get back to your process, get back to focusing on what you can control, get back to your own why, get back to the things that matter most to you. And I don't know, I'm speaking about myself in third person, but basically for myself is really reconnecting to things that matter most to me. And the thing that helps me do that is to make sure I have established the parameters or the territory of when I know I'm getting away from my sweet spot. And yeah, so that's really what helps me.
Oh man, I just love the idea that, like, right? Because like we respond to like visceral like cues, that we respond to the emotion of things and to our physiology of things. And I think that like you having those cues is such a great indicator of sort of what's going on in your world. And again, that's, like you said, you have to adjust the dial and tune in. And I think that's so powerful to have. I mean, that right there is a process for getting back to the process, like really realistically, right? And I mean, I love this question because, so Marcus Aubrey, he wrote something about this being like, he calls it the results versus process paradox. So his goal, he talks about, is like, how do we collapse the paradox of wanting something that is outcome dependent, but recognizing that the journey towards that outcome is actually where you need to focus. And like, that's the conversation with professional athletes. I feel like a lot of times it's like, yeah, roger that, man. Results matter. Got you. Like, it's a game. This is your job. Like, it matters. Now, those results only happen for 3 hours a night. There's like, you guys are at the ballpark for another 12 hours. So like, everything that you're doing for that 12 hours, for that 8 hours that you're at the ballpark, all that stuff's in your control. All that stuff, all like what Lauren, you said, like the intent, the deliberateness, the focus on it, like all of those things build up and add up into this journey that you're on to eventually put yourself in the best position to play the game at night. And it's like how cool is that, that all day you are taking skill in, right? Like your process, your journey is all about taking skill in for a 3 hour game at night where you get to just let your skill come out. Like, that's fun. That should be enjoyable. There shouldn't be pressure or a threat about that. Like, my goodness, you did all the work all day. Like, this is your chance to go out and play. That's a major shift in focus in mind, right? Like, that's just a complete change of how I think people view the actual performance. When in reality, the hard part is the monotony, the daily routines, the boringness of it, And so, I mean,
Right.
we could probably have an entire show about this question, but I find it so interesting the way that all three of us sort of have looked at this and constructed it and broke it down. And man, again, we talked about the goals and it's like of the show, and it's like, this is what it's about. Like, it just absolutely fires me up. And also the fact that we have absolutely crushed the time already, and we are actually getting to the closing of the show. And I know there's more, but don't worry, we will continue to have these shows. And so, we want to close our show out every single time the same way. And for us, the importance of gratitude and optimism is an absolute cornerstone of all three of our lives, both personally and professionally. So as part of our show, we want to end each episode with a hunt the good stuff, because we know that optimism and gratitude is contagious. So Lauren, will you please tell me one good thing that has happened to you in the past day?
Yes. I will say that the one good thing that's happened to me recently, and this happens actually, quite often, is just how clutch my husband is. And when I am having a crazy day, when I am busy and I just barely even have 10 minutes in between meetings, that I walk outside my door and there's lunch sitting on the ledge, saying, and then a note that says like, I love you, just to take that stress off. So one of the things that's happened recently is that, and it happens more often than it just happened yesterday. And so I think for me right now, something I'm super grateful for is just like my team.
Love it. Justin, tell us one good thing.
Immediately my mind went to family as well, especially at a time like this, and with everything going on with the pandemic and so forth. You immediately go to the things that matter most. I would say one thing about me is if you're not in my immediate right here, right now, I struggle to reach out and call to people I probably should be calling. And I had a really good conversation with mom and dad just today, and so I need to do a better job of checking in. But we had a really good phone call today. I'm in Florida, they're in California, and it was one of those calls where you hang up, you're like, I am so glad I got to talk to mom and dad. I need to do that more often, and so that was a good one for me today.
That is awesome. In order to close out the Hunt the Good Stuff, we are sticking with the family theme here. I'm down in spring training right now. I'm going to go a full 7 weeks without seeing my wife and daughter. It is brutal and it stinks, but man, when you think about the glue that holds a family together, that will 100% be my wife, Megan. She'll be embarrassed for me saying this, but my goodness, like the things that she does to support our family, it's unbelievable. And, it's snowing in Cleveland and I'm out here in the sun. So I know that she's fully working extra double time with all that snow and cold. And so I just want to say how much I appreciate what she's doing. It makes me and the job that I'm able to do even that much better. So as always, support to our families for helping us what we do. And I'm glad that that was the theme for our first Hunt the Good Stuff. And so that is episode 1 of the Mindset Show. It is always a blast to spend time here with Lauren and Justin. We are very excited about the continued conversation of where we're going to be doing. And so, for a tune in for next week, we always like to leave a little possible lead about things we might be talking about. And I think one of the things we're going to dive into is the old adage of how do I learn to get uncomfortable being uncomfortable? And is that the right way to be thinking? So looking forward to everyone tuning in. Justin and Lauren, as always, amazing to see you guys. And until next time, we'll see you guys soon.